Hey, deserving listeners, Ultimatum Queer Love Season 2, let's watch.
You make your life intentionally complex, and I can simplify it.
Like what?
Lose the luggage.
You gotta start carrying my shit. Why don't you just bring a bigger bag?
Okay, I don't know if I think I'm clearly biased about Dana's personality, but the little bit there, yeah, they're just having a friendly banter conversation. Dana is telling Mel that she makes her life too complicated with luggage and whatnot, and Dana is just, having a conversation. But it is just another minor tick in the column of, I hesitate to use the clinical words that I would use with colleagues because on the internet, the words are misinterpreted. So I'll just say, I haven't been showing a lot of scenes with Dana that don't indicate any kind of problem at all. So I want to point that out.
It's like I hate being in our apartment, but I also love being at home with you. I feel like I need you too much right now, and that worries me. I'm becoming too dependent on how you feel.
Okay, so you might remember a while back, I talked for a while about avoidant attachment, preoccupied attachment, and insecure attachment. I'm going to my notes because if I remember right, yeah. So in the Netflix tadum.com write-up, Dana herself identified as avoidant attachment. She says, Dana struggles with avoidant attachment style, but ironically isn't the one hesitating to commit, right? She's the one who was giving the ultimatum to Megan. And I can't know, it's complicated, but the way that Dana was behaving with Mel and with Megan, frankly, didn't point in the direction of avoidant attachment style. Now, that doesn't mean I wouldn't conceptualize her in that way. And to a large extent, it's an opinion, right? There are measures that we can administer to individuals to assess what attachment style they seem to be, but it's largely nuanced and individual, and every clinician might have a different opinion. But anyway, the hallmarks of Dana's attachment reactivity seem to be that of preoccupied and anxious, in that when Megan was across the room talking to AJ, Dana went over there and had what seemed to be kind of an awkward intrusion and territorial establishment, which is stretching it for sure. I'm over-interpreting, but it's possible it was that, to establish territory. And also that Dana is the one that was pressuring Megan, and Megan said that, to get married quick. They've only been together for a year. And months prior, the ultimatum was probably given between Dana and Megan. And then once that wasn't panning out for Dana, then the advertisement comes on for ultimatum casting call, and then Dana responded. In all likelihood, I'm guessing Dana was the one that responded. And then there's several months before they start shooting. So that means at minimum, Dana was pressuring, as Megan says, to get married maybe just after 6 months. Now, that doesn't mean anything in particular, but it isn't typical of individuals with avoidant attachment to move that quickly. They certainly can, and I will always say that underneath every avoidantly attached individual is a preoccupied, anxious individual, in that avoidantly attached people have insecure attachment and a lot of unmet needs attachment-wise, and they're desperate for it. Their way of coping, though, is to shut down and deny that they have those needs, but they're there. So you can certainly have an avoidantly attached individual who is desperate for closeness, right? But it's not the first thought that I have with someone that is pressuring that much, right? So there's that. And the specifics around this is that for anxiously preoccupied individuals, when there is questions about closeness and security and loyalty and dedication and longevity of a relationship and whether or not the person actually does love them, then they tend to pursue. They tend to signal more. They tend to ask and grasp more. And that can be functional sometimes, right? But it can also lead to problems because it's not even really what they want. The preoccupied, anxious people, if they were to actually feel secure and safe, they wouldn't feel the pressure to quickly move down the road because they're not ready themselves. But their desperation and their reactivity and their terror motivates them to move forward even faster than what they want, right? So keeping all that in mind, and then Dana went over to Mel prior to them choosing each other and was getting on Mel's case for being distant and stuff. And so all that very much looked like preoccupied anxious, really. I can't know that. And in my longer lecture on this in a previous episode, I talked about how it's really important to, because people try to figure out, am I avoidant? Am I preoccupied? And, sometimes often that is useful. But in a pinch, it's more important to understand where you are in the spectrum of insecure attachment and how you in particular, because every avoidant person is different, every preoccupied person is different. There are themes, but everyone's different. And it's much more useful just to understand how you respond to attachment threat. When you detect there's distance or hurt or possible rejection or something, what do you do? Everyone feels hurt, everyone feels afraid. When you feel those feelings, what do? Do you shut down? Do you deny? Do you say, I don't need people? Or do you signal? Do you get angry visibly? Do you get upset visibly? Do you plead with them to stop doing that? Those are the differences. Do you tend to see rejection very early? Or are you the sort of person, avoidant, who doesn't really notice much emotion that's going around you, even though a lot of emotion is going around you anyway? So keeping all that in mind, for Dana, let's rewatch that because, that's what she's talking about is right down the middle, preoccupied. Now, I'm arguing with a statement that I think she made, according to Tadum, the Netflix website. And, the other thing I'll say is that a lot of people who are preoccupied are ashamed of it, and so they will recognize that they have attachment insecurity, but they would just rather be avoidant because there's less stigma around it for silly reasons, honestly. But also, people will mistakenly identify themselves as avoidantly attached when they are operating from a preoccupied, anxious attachment style, but they will burn out on relationships. It'll be so overwhelmingly hurtful and scary and chaotic and upsetting, and they'll even hate the way they behaved in the most recent relationship that they just rule out relationships entirely. They just go completely single, for what am I saying? Incel, I guess. But they become, they just say, I can't date, I can't do long-term relationships. And they avoid relationships for, maybe years. And when they hear the topic sentence of avoidant attachment, they say, oh, I'm avoiding because I'm avoiding relationships. But that wouldn't be the way I would characterize it. The individual is avoiding relationships because of the pain of preoccupied, anxious attachment from the past. Anyway, so I wonder if that's where Dana's coming. But let's rewind and watch this.
It's like I hate being in our apartment, but I also love being at home with you.
So Dana says, I hate being in my apartment, but I love being home with you. I hate being in our apartment, but I think maybe what Dana is saying is, I don't like being cooped up at home, but I love being at home with you. Okay.
I feel like I need you too much right now, and that worries me.
So, I need you too much right now. Where does she get that from? I think they're a week into their trial marriages. I need you too much right now, and that worries me. Okay. I wonder what she's worried about, becoming too dependent, getting hurt, or disappointing Megan, pulling away from Megan, you know. By the way, I don't know if I've shown all, I know I haven't shown all, but I don't know if I've shown any of it. Mel and Dana, in terms of the edit, seem to be clicking quite a bit, both emotionally and physically. So I just want to mention that, whereas others are not, which is, you know, often the case. So for Dana, she's saying, I need you too much right now. What is she basing that on, right? Is it, I'm guessing it's because when Mel isn't home or Dana isn't with Mel, then Dana starts to spin out of control, right? The preoccupied downward spiral of what's Mel doing? Does she like me? Is this all fake? Is she going to leave me? What was that thing she said earlier? I texted her. How come she hasn't texted me back? That's the preoccupied spiral. So I wonder if she's experienced that a bit. I'm just speculating.
I'm becoming too dependent on how you feel. And like we're literally sharing a brain cell at this point.
Okay, a lot to unpack there. So I'm becoming too dependent on how you feel. Okay, typically, generally speaking, that's from experience for Dana, not only with Mel, but maybe even with previous relationships in which Dana will get upset or worried about indications either that are real about Mel or not. You know, hard to say what she's referring to because they haven't shown us. But then she says, and we're literally sharing a brain cell at this point. I don't think I've shown the clips indicating this, but I've been noticing that Dana has been enmeshing pretty quick, which is fine. You know, people can fall in love. People do fall in love. And some people are, you know, they hand themselves over to that, and that can be very functional, be very euphoric and wonderful and bonding and romantic, and it's what makes us write most of the songs we write and paints most of the paintings, you know, that feeling that you get in the beginning. So she's maybe that, but it's also possible that given her attachment injuries, she's a bit of a black and white attacher and is black and whiting the situation, meaning that it's all encompassingly good. There's no bad to it. Finally, I found someone that I can depend on. And it also points in the more moderate to severe preoccupied anxious attachment in that Dana was just a week ago pressuring Megan to get married, or a couple weeks ago anyway, to get married. Dana was like, I love you. I want to be with you. I can't believe you don't want to marry me. Dana was upset about that. That's why she went on the Ultimatum show. And then as soon as she's with Mel, now maybe that's just chemistry. Maybe they're not really in love and Dana is still like, no, I still love Megan. I'm sure there's some of that. But for preoccupied, anxious people, they will tend to, when there's indications of closeness, they'll tend to take whatever they can get. And they also, given in all likelihood the abuse they went through 0 to 5 years old, were denied the opportunity to get to know who they are and how they feel. And so they notice that there's a part of them that really wants closeness and warmth and loyalty and dedication and security, but they don't have enough contact with who they are to know, do I want this relationship? Is this really what's best for me? Is this really long-term the way that I should be thinking or making decisions? You know, it's like a 3-year-old doesn't think about the long-term consequences of loving their parents. You know, they just love, and that's the way we want 3-year-olds to be. Well, for some people that are abused or parented in a very chaotic way, they are in some ways stuck in that need because it hasn't been met yet. So they tend to you know, when they find someone, it doesn't help a 3-year-old to think of the nuances of their parents. It helps a 3-year-old to have a black and white way of seeing things. My mom and dad are all good. They're wonderful. You know, my parents are wonderful. My mom and mom or dad and dad are wonderful, and they can do no wrong. And then when they do wrong, it is split and that's a different parent that is doing the bad thing. I'm exaggerating, and it even by 3 that starts to dissipate a bit. Anyway, So it could be that Dana, I'm speculating a lot. The reason why I'm doing this is not to say anything about Dana. It is to educate y'all about this sort of stuff. I could be completely wrong about all this. In fact, I'm positive I'm wrong about much of it because I'm basing off just a tiny little edited TV show. But anyway, so when she says we're literally sharing a brain cell at this point, there have been other indications from Dana that are her framing their, because they're getting along and they're bonding. And the way Dana frames it is we are one. We are sharing a brain cell. We are the same. That is enmeshment. Now, that could be wonderful, and it's poetic, and it depends, right? It's two hearts beat as one, right? U2 song from the early 80s. Two of hearts, I need you, I want. Anyway, that's different. Anyway, point is that for Dana, she might be, because of that unmet early need, because that's the way 2, 3, 4-year-olds are, they will bond and enmesh and overdepend, right? And they see themselves as extensions of their parents, and their parents see the children as extensions of them, and you want that. And over time, that becomes more and more different. I don't want to say separate, because you could still love each other. It's just a different love that evolves out of that, a different closeness, right? And so the way that Dana has been talking has been along those lines of enmeshment. We are one. It's a way of not only framing things, but it's a wish. I want to be enveloped. If y'all remember Baby Reindeer, when, what was her name on the show? The title, or the main character, she would go to Donnie and say, I just want to open you up and crawl inside of you and live there, or I want to open myself up and have you crawl. I can't remember which one. And it's in a creepy sense, but it's a normal human, and all of us have that. All of us want to return to the womb or to the embrace of our parents when we're 18 months old. It's wonderful. It's all encompassing. I mean, hopefully y'all had that. So, and if you didn't have it, then you still want it later in life is the point. So, we're literally sharing one brain cell at this point. It's notable.
The last one that we both have.
I do sometimes worry we spend too much time together. Because even the times we could do things apart, we don't. If you have an errand, I want to go with you. So I just wonder if that would...
Yeah, so just more and more ticks. Now, again, it could just be love, right? When you're in love, you want to spend all your time with the person. It could be that completely. But if we're looking for educational bullet points for preoccupied anxious attachment, that's more of it. But I want to be very clear that there's nothing wrong with wanting to spend all your time with your partner. That is often pathologized by the patriarchy and is stupid. If anything, we were designed, so to speak, we evolved out of the natural circumstances of always being around our people and perhaps literally never being out of eyesight from our kin, our tribe, maybe 50 people. So it might be even more natural, more regulating to spend all your time with people. So, there's that. But it is interesting that she's the one identifying that. She's like, I think what Dana is talking about right now, she's more talking about herself. She's not framing it that way, but I think that is what she is indicating, is that when Mel does an errand, Dana wants to go with her, right? Or when Dana does an errand, she wants Mel to, and Dana is the one. Mel isn't concerned about it or isn't voicing concern about it, but Dana is like, that there's something wrong there. Now, then she says, I just wonder if that would create too much codependency. So listen to my deep dive on codependency. What she is trying to say is over-dependency, and she's using the word codependency. That's over-dependency is not the same as codependency. Whenever you think of codependency, think of where it came from, the term, which is still generally the way it's used, accurately anyway, is that codependency doesn't come from a relationship dependence. It comes from alcohol dependence. So you had the alcohol dependent partner, and then you had the codependent partner. So it's a co-pilot in the alcoholism. So think of it that way. Codependency is co-pilot to addiction. So think of it as like you have the addicted person and then the co-addicted. It's codependent, dependent on alcohol. And that person tends to be over-functioning, and the dependent person, the addicted person, tends to be under-functioning. It's complicated, but the codependent personality is someone that is over-functioning and enabling someone else with a problem. And the codependent person needs the under-functioner to remain under-functioning. That's that dynamic. Anyway, this is how detailed. But she's using the word. I think people somehow when they hear the term, it sounds like codependent, like we're cooperating in this dependency. We're codependent on each other. But that's not the accurate way. But everyone uses it. In fact, half of the websites I looked at would use it this way, or they would blend the two. I would often see that websites will say, here are the hallmarks of codependency, and half of what they were saying was actual codependency, and the other half was over-dependency. Anyway.
Create too much codependency, which is something, I'm like working on.
Yeah.
So she says she's working on it. She's working, it sounds like prior to Mel, right? That I have been working on trying to be less dependent, less needy, less, my mood or my sense of well-being. I don't want it to be tied to my partner's approval of me or spending time with me or constant affirmations that they're never going to leave me. So that's great that Dana is recognizing that, right? And I'd be so curious as to why in the tadum.com write-up that she would say she's avoidant. Like, I'm wondering how she got there. And I'm guessing it's the common scenario of where she burnt out on relationships and was avoiding them and thought that was avoidant.
I don't think we spend
But
enough
I'm not
time
happy when we don't.
together.
You don't think we spend enough time together?
But I think I missed something. Let's rewind.
If you have an errand, I want to go with you. So I just wonder if that would create too much codependency, which is something, I'm like working on.
Yeah. I don't think we spend
But
enough
I'm not
time
happy when we don't.
together.
Okay, so Mel says, I don't think we spend too much time together. And then Dana said, wait, what?
Something, I'm like working on.
Yeah. I don't think we spend.
Mel says, I don't think we spend enough time together. I don't think we spend enough time together. Okay. So that's interesting, right? Maybe for Mel, sorry, I'd be curious what Mel is thinking. I think Mel just is connecting with Dana. So maybe Dana is just really up in her head about how much time they're spending together because of previous experiences. And if she were to just relax about that, it would be okay to spend all your time together. I don't know. But then Dana says, but I'm not happy when we don't. Right. So Dana's saying, I'm worried about spending too much time, but when I don't spend time with you, I'm not happy. So it's good that Dana is aware of this.
But I'm not happy when we don't.
Together.
You don't think we spend enough time together?
We could spend more time together.
When? Maybe if you took less showers, we could spend more time together.
I think I should just wait outside the bathroom door every time you pee.
Mel is pretty chill. I think that's probably a good word for her. So she doesn't worry about things much. And I could see her actually being very good for Dana because of that, for better, for worse, honestly. Because for preoccupied, semi-frantic relationship people, they sometimes will benefit from a configuration with someone who is more mellow, less reactive, slower to say things, less impulsive verbally, more valuing of being even-keeled. It can seem like the Mels of the world are avoidantly attached, but it isn't necessarily true. They could be secure, but they could be anything, really. It's just a way that people, maybe from their families or just the way that they operate. But anyway, so Mel, oh, right, that's right. I'm looking at my notes. That Mel it has a number of indicators that she has shared that her whole childhood was extremely chaotic. At the very least, she mentioned that she had 4 women that she called mom, and as soon as something went wrong, I'm thinking in her parents' relationship, maybe dad and stepmom, then she says she never heard from them again, and that that's gotta hurt. And then she's been living on her own since 16. So what is that? Was that high conflict? Was that because the parents were neglecting, or both, or drug addicted, or who knows? But Mel, I think, probably given all that, and given the way that Mel presents, I wouldn't be surprised if Mel has very similar attachment injuries and needs as the way I'm speculating Dana would have. But the way that Mel dealt with it was by being the calm one in the family. You could see that, the way that Mel is. You could see Mel in all the chaos that's happening. You could see Mel just being like, hey, everything's cool, even though everything isn't cool. And as a way to help the family function, but also as a way of coping herself. Meanwhile, underneath it all is a desperation and maybe a too quick to fall in love kind of thing. Because with Mel is with Marie. They've been together for 4 years. Oh, right, they operate that food truck together. So, I don't know. Mel's harder to speculate around, but at the very least, Mel is saying, no, I think everything's fine. In fact, I think we should spend more time. I think half of the reason why Mel is saying all this is because she just wants to reassure Dana as a good partner. She just, no, we're fine. You don't have to worry about it. But I think there's another possibility that Mel similarly has attachment injury and is just not forward or on the surface the way Dana is frantic. Mel is also frantic because Mel's talking about I don't even want to be separate when we go to the bathroom, that kind of thing. Now, again, when you're in love, then, or even in everyone deals with it differently, and there's nothing pathological about that at all. It's really quite sweet, right? So I just want to couch all that in that. All right, well, let's adjourn there. Tune in next time when I continue watching, and everyone out there, please take care of yourself because you deserve it. You really, really do.